The kitchen was hot. It was always hot. Steam rose from the large pots, and the smell of strange spices filled the air. Sung wiped the sweat from his forehead and continued to chop vegetables. His knife moved fast, cutting the purple roots into small, equal pieces. He had worked in this kitchen for 3 years now. 3 years since his ship crashed on this planet. 3 years since they found him in the wreckage and decided he could be useful, not as a soldier, not as a scholar, but as a servant. Sung did not complain. He was alive. That was more than he expected when his ship fell from the sky. The head cook, a large named Boris, walked past him. Boris had 4 arms and skin the color of pale blue water. Like all, he was tall, much taller than Sung. They stood at least 8 feet high, with long limbs and faces that looked almost like Earth's deer, if deer could speak and build empires among the stars. "Human," Boris said without looking at him. "The Queen's tea, prepare it now." Sung put down his knife and bowed his head. "Yes, sir." He walked to the special cabinet where they kept the royal tea leaves. The Queen liked her tea at exactly the right temperature, not too hot, not too cold. Sung had learned this after his first month when he served tea that was slightly too warm. The punishment was light, just extra work for a week, but he never forgot. He prepared the tea with careful hands. The leaves were from a plant that grew only on the mountains of the. They were worth more than his life, or so he was told. He measured the exact amount, poured water that was heated to the perfect temperature, and waited for exactly 4 minutes. While he waited, he looked out the small window above the sink. The palace was beautiful. White stone walls rose high into the purple sky. Towers with golden tops caught the light of the 2 suns. Gardens filled with flowers of every color spread out below. And beyond the palace walls, the great city stretched to the horizon. It was a beautiful world. Sung sometimes forgot that he was a prisoner here. The tea was ready. He poured it into a cup made of thin crystal. The cup was so delicate that he was afraid to hold it too tight. He placed it on a silver tray, added a small flower as decoration, and turned to leave. "Be quick," Boris called out. "The Queen does not like to wait." Sung walked through the long hallways of the palace. Other servants moved around him. Most were, but there were a few other species too. A small, furry creature from a planet he did not know mopped the floor. A tall, thin being with no visible eyes carried clean towels. None of them looked at Sung. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. Most had never seen one before he arrived. He climbed the stairs to the upper levels of the palace. Here, the decorations became more beautiful. Paintings hung on the walls, showing scenes from history. Sculptures made of gold and silver stood in corners. The carpet under his feet was soft and thick. Guards stood at every corner. They were the royal guard, the finest soldiers in the empire. Each one wore armor that shined like mirrors. Each one carried a long spear with an energy blade at the tip. They were tall, even for, and they had been trained since birth to protect the royal family. They did not look at Sung as he passed. To them, he was not worth noticing. Just a small human carrying a tray. What threat could he possibly be? He reached the Queen's chambers. 2 guards stood at the door. They were the largest he had ever seen, each one nearly 9 feet tall. Their faces showed no emotion as they looked down at him. "Tea for the Queen," Sung said in the language. He had learned to speak it well over the past 3 years. One guard nodded and opened the door. Sung walked inside. The Queen's chambers were the most beautiful rooms in the palace. Large windows let in the light of the 2 suns. The furniture was made of dark wood with gold decorations. Flowers filled every corner, their sweet smell mixing in the air. And in the center of the room, sitting on a chair that was almost a throne, was Queen. She was old for nearly 200 years, but she still looked strong. Her skin was a deeper blue than most of her kind, almost the color of Earth's ocean. Her eyes were large and golden, and they seemed to see everything. She wore a simple white dress with a crown of silver on her head. When Sung entered, she was reading a document. She did not look up. "Place it on the table," she said. Her voice was soft but carried the weight of someone who had ruled for 100 years. Sung walked to the small table beside her chair. He placed the tray down carefully, making sure not to spill a single drop. Then he stepped back and waited. This was the rule. Servants did not leave until they were told to leave. The queen continued to read. Minutes passed. Sung stood still, his hands folded in front of him. He had learned patience in this palace. He had learned to be invisible. Finally, the queen put down her document and looked at him. Her golden eyes studied him for a long moment. Sung felt like she was looking into his soul. "You are the human," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Majesty. I have heard about you. You have been here for 3 years and you have not caused any trouble. That is unusual for your kind." Sung was not sure how to respond. He simply bowed his head. The queen picked up her tea and took a small sip. She nodded slightly, showing that it was acceptable. "Tell me, human, do you miss your home?" The question surprised him. No one had ever asked him that before. No one cared what a servant thought or felt. "Yes, Your Majesty," he answered honestly. "I miss Earth very much." "Earth, such a strange name for a planet. You name your world after dirt." There was no insult in her voice. She sounded curious. "It is our word for soil, Your Majesty, the ground where things grow." The queen took another sip of tea. "I have read about your people. Your planet is far from here, on the edge of explored space. Your species is young. You have only been traveling among the stars for a short time." "Yes, Your Majesty." "And yet your kind has already earned a reputation." She set down her cup and looked at him again. "They say humans are stubborn. They say you fight even when you cannot win. They say you have a word for this. What is it?" Sung thought for a moment. "Perhaps you mean determination, Your Majesty, or maybe courage." "No, those are not the words. There is another word, one that has no translation in our language." Sung understood. "You mean spite, Your Majesty." The queen tilted her head. "Yes, spite. Explain this word to me." Sung took a deep breath. This was a dangerous conversation. He was just a servant. He should not be having talks with the queen about anything, but she had asked, and he could not refuse to answer. "Spite is when you do something not because it helps you, but because it hurts someone who hurt you. Or it is when you keep going not because you can win, but because you refuse to let others see you lose. It is a kind of anger that makes you strong when you should be weak." The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled just a little, a foolish emotion. "Yes, Your Majesty, probably. But also a dangerous one." Sung said nothing. The queen waved her hand. "You may go, return for the cup in 1 hour." Sung bowed and left the room. His heart was beating fast. That was the longest conversation he had ever had with any, let alone the queen herself. He did not understand why she had shown interest in him. He was nobody, a servant, a crashed pilot from a distant world. He walked back to the kitchen, thinking about her questions. Why did she want to know about spite? Why did she care about what made humans different? In the kitchen, Boris put him back to work immediately. There was food to prepare. The Festival of Moons was coming in 3 days, and the palace would be full of important guests. Every servant would work twice as hard. Sung cut vegetables. He washed dishes. He carried heavy pots from one side of the kitchen to the other. His body was tired, but his mind kept returning to the queen's words. "They say humans are stubborn. They say you fight even when you cannot win." He thought about his ship crashing. He thought about waking up in the wreckage with broken ribs and a cut on his head. He thought about crawling through the mud for 2 days until they found him. Any other species would have died. The doctors who treated him said so, but he had kept going, not because he believed he would survive, but because he was too stubborn to stop. Maybe that was spite, or maybe it was just being human. That night Sung slept in the small room he shared with 3 other servants. It was hot and crowded, but it was better than sleeping outside. He dreamed of Earth. He dreamed of blue skies and green grass. He dreamed of his mother's cooking and his father's laugh. When he woke up, he was still in the palace, still a servant, still far from home. But something had changed. For the first time in 3 years, someone had seen him as more than just a human. The queen had looked at him and seen something worth asking about. He did not know what that meant. He did not know if it was good or bad. 3 days until the Festival of Moons. 3 days until the palace would be full of lights and music and dancing. 3 days until everything would change. Sung did not know this yet. He simply went back to work, cutting vegetables and serving tea, invisible to everyone around him. But the queen's golden eyes had seen him, and she would not forget. The Festival of Moons was the most important celebration in the empire. It happened once every 10 years, when all 3 moons of the planet lined up in the night sky. For 7 nights, the people would feast and dance and give thanks to the gods who had blessed them with such a beautiful world. Sung had never seen anything like it. The palace had been transformed. Flowers covered every surface. Lights of every color hung from the ceilings. Musicians played strange instruments that made sounds he had never heard before, and everywhere in their finest clothes walked and talked and laughed. He was busier than he had ever been. The kitchen worked day and night to prepare food for hundreds of guests. Important from every corner of the empire had come to celebrate with the queen. Lords and ladies, generals and scholars, merchants and priests. They all wanted to be seen at the palace during the festival. On the first night of the festival, Sung carried trays of food from the kitchen to the great hall. The hall was massive, big enough to hold 1,000 with room to spare. A long table sat at one end, where the queen ate with her most important guests. Other tables filled the rest of the hall, each one covered with food and drinks. Sung moved through the crowd like a ghost. No one paid attention to him. He was just a small human carrying food, barely visible among the tall. He set down his tray, picked up empty dishes, and returned to the kitchen. Over and over he made this trip, his feet aching and his arms tired. On his 5th trip to the hall, he passed close to the queen's table. She was speaking with a he did not recognize, a tall male with dark blue skin and cold eyes. The male wore clothes of deep red, and on his chest was a symbol that Sung had seen before. It was the mark of House, one of the great families of the empire. Sung had heard rumors about House. They were unhappy with the queen. They believed their family should rule instead of hers, but they were just rumors. Servants talked about many things that were not true. He set down his tray and picked up empty plates. As he worked, he could not help but hear the conversation at the queen's table. The eastern provinces require more soldiers, the male from House was saying. The raiders grow bolder every season. The eastern provinces have enough soldiers, the queen replied. Her voice was calm but firm. What they need is better leadership. Perhaps House could provide a general who knows how to use the soldiers he already has. The male's eyes narrowed, but he smiled. Your Majesty is wise as always. Sung moved away from the table. That conversation had felt dangerous. The way the male looked at the queen, the tension in his voice, the false smile on his face. Something was wrong. But it was not his place to worry about such things. He was a servant. He had work to do. The first night of the festival ended without incident. So did the second night and the third. Each night, the celebrations grew larger and louder. Each night, Sung worked until he could barely stand. And each night, he fell into his bed exhausted, dreaming of nothing at all. On the 4th night, something changed. It was late, well past midnight. Most of the guests had gone to their rooms. Only a few remained in the great hall, drinking and talking quietly. Sung was cleaning tables when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see a young female standing there. She wore the simple clothes of a servant, but her face was one he had not seen before. "You are the human," she said quietly. "Yes," Sung replied, confused. "Can I help you?" The female looked around, making sure no one was listening. Then she leaned close and whispered, "Go to the kitchen. Stay there tonight. Do not come out no matter what you hear." Before Sung could respond, she walked away and disappeared into the shadows. He stood there, his heart beating fast. What had just happened? Who was that female? Why had she warned him? He thought about telling someone, but who would he tell? No one would believe a human servant who said a strange female had warned him about something. They would think he was crazy. Or worse, they would think he was making trouble. So he did what she said. He went to the kitchen. Most of the kitchen staff had gone to sleep. Only Boras and 2 other cooks remained, preparing food for the morning. Sung took a corner and pretended to organize supplies. He watched the door and waited. An hour passed, then 2. Nothing happened. Sung began to think that the female had been playing a joke on him. A strange joke, but perhaps found such things funny. Then he heard the screams. They came from above, from the upper levels of the palace. High, terrible screams that cut through the night like knives. Boras dropped the pot he was holding. The other cooks froze in place. "What is that?" one of them asked. More screams, then the sound of running feet, then silence. Boras moved toward the door. "Stay here," he ordered. "I will find out what is happening." He opened the door and stepped into the hallway. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a dark shape dropped from the ceiling and landed on him. Boras had time to make one small sound before the shape moved, and then he fell to the ground and did not move again. The 2 cooks screamed and ran for the back door. Sung did not run. He could not. His body was frozen with fear as he watched the dark shape step into the kitchen. It was or at least it looked like one, but its skin was pure black and its eyes were red like fire. It wore no clothes, just shadows that seemed to move around its body. In its hand was a long blade that dripped with blue blood. An assassin. Sung had heard stories about them. The Shadow Blades, they were called. Killers for hire who came from a distant world where light never reached. They were said to be the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. And one was standing 10 feet away from him. The assassin looked at Sung. Its red eyes studied him for a moment. Then it made a sound that might have been laughter. "A human," it said. Its voice was like dry leaves scraping on stone. "How curious. You are far from home, little creature." Sung could not speak. He could not move. All he could do was stare at the blade in the assassin's hand, the blade that would end his life. But the assassin did not attack. Instead, it turned and walked toward the door that led to the main hallway. "Stay here, little creature," it said without looking back. "This does not concern you. We are here for the queen." Then it was gone, moving up the stairs toward the upper levels. For a long moment, Sung stood still. His heart was pounding so hard that he could hear it in his ears. His hands were shaking. His legs felt weak. The queen. They were here to kill the queen. He thought about what she had said to him 3 days ago. She had asked about spite, about humans who fought even when they could not win. She had looked at him with those golden eyes and seen something that others could not see. She had been the only to ever treat him like a person, instead of an object. And now assassins were going to kill her. Sung looked around the kitchen. His eyes fell on a heavy metal tray, the kind used to carry large pots. It was not much of a weapon. It was not a weapon at all, really. Just a piece of kitchen equipment. He picked it up anyway. His legs started moving before his mind could tell them to stop. He walked out of the kitchen, past the body of Boras and into the hallway. He could hear fighting from above. The sound of energy weapons, the clash of blades, the screams of the dying. He climbed the stairs. With each step his fear grew stronger. He was walking toward his death. He knew this. There was nothing he could do against Shadow Blade assassins. He was just a human, a small, weak human with a metal tray. But he kept climbing. He reached the second level. Bodies lay on the floor. Guards in their shining armor, killed before they could even fight back. Servants who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Blood was everywhere, the blue blood of mixing with the darker blood of other species. Sung stepped over the bodies and kept walking. He reached the third level. More bodies, more blood. The fighting was louder now, coming from just ahead. He pressed himself against the wall and moved carefully, trying not to make a sound. He came to a corner and stopped. Very slowly, he looked around the edge. The hallway ahead was wide and well lit. At the end of it was a large door, the door to the throne room where the queen would be during formal events. In front of the door stood a group of guards, maybe 10 or 12. They were the last line of defense. And facing them were the assassins. Sung counted 7, all of them dark shapes with red eyes and shadow blades. They moved like water, flowing around the guards' attacks and striking back with deadly speed. As Sung watched, 3 guards fell in quick succession. Their armor meant nothing against the shadow blades. The remaining guards began to step back. Then one of them turned and ran. He pushed past the others and fled down a side hallway. For a moment the other guards stood firm. Then another ran, and suddenly they were all running, leaving the door to the throne room unguarded. The assassins laughed. It was a terrible sound, like bones breaking and metal scraping. They walked toward the throne room door, in no hurry now that the guards were gone. Sung watched the guards run. The finest soldiers in the empire, trained since birth to protect the royal family. They ran like frightened animals. And in the throne room, the queen waited alone. Sung's hands tightened on his metal tray. His whole body was shaking now. Every part of him wanted to run, to hide, to survive. This was not his fight. The queen was not his queen. He was just a servant, a prisoner, a crashed pilot far from home. But he thought of her golden eyes. He thought of her questions about spite. He thought of how she had looked at him and seen a person, not just a human. The assassins reached the throne room door. One of them raised its blade to cut through the lock. And Sung stepped out from behind the corner. "Stop," he said. His voice was small and weak and shaking. The assassins turned. 7 pairs of red eyes looked at him. 7 shadow blades gleamed in the light. And then, impossibly, they laughed. "The little creature from the kitchen," said the one who had spoken to him before. "I told you to stay hidden. Why have you come?" Sung raised his metal tray. He knew how foolish he looked. A small human facing 7 of the deadliest killers in the galaxy with nothing but a kitchen tray. "You will not hurt the queen," he said. The assassins laughed again, louder this time. "And who will stop us?" the leader asked. "You little creature, with your piece of metal, do you know what we are? Do you know how many warriors we have killed tonight? Your guards are dead or fleeing. Your soldiers cannot save you. No one is coming." Sung swallowed hard. "I know." "Then why do you stand there? Why do you not run like the others?" Sung thought about spite, about doing something not because you can win, but because you refuse to let others see you lose, about the anger that makes you strong when you should be weak. "Because I am human," he said, "and we do not run." The leader tilted its head, studying him with those red eyes. "How curious. You know you will die, you know you cannot save her, and still you stand." "Yes." For a long moment there was silence. The assassins looked at each other as if they could not understand what they were seeing. A creature that should be fleeing for its life, standing before them with a metal tray, refusing to move. Then the leader raised its blade. "Very well, little creature. If you wish to die for your queen, we will grant your wish." It stepped forward, blade ready to strike. And behind Sung, a voice spoke. "Wait." The queen stood in the doorway of the throne room. She must have opened it while the assassins were distracted. Her golden eyes were calm, showing no fear. She looked at Sung, at his shaking hands and his metal tray and his terrified face. And she smiled. "I knew I saw something in you," she said softly. Then she turned to face the assassins, and her expression changed to one of cold fury. "You have entered my palace, you have killed my people, and now you threaten the one creature brave enough to stand against you." Her voice grew louder, filling the hallway. "You will answer for this." The leader laughed. "Strong words from a queen with no guards. What will you do? Your soldier stands before you with a kitchen tray. Will you hide behind him?" The queen took a step forward, placing herself beside Sung. She looked at him once more, and her eyes were soft. "No," she said, "I will stand with him." And in that moment, Sung understood. They would probably both die here. The assassins were too strong, too fast, too deadly, but they would face them together. A queen and a kitchen servant, standing side by side. The assassin leader stared at them, its red eyes moving from the queen to Sung and back again. For a moment, it seemed confused. This was not how things were supposed to happen. Queens did not stand beside servants. Rulers did not fight their own battles. "You are making a mistake," the leader said. "Step aside and let us have the human. We came for you, not for him. Your death will be quick. His will not be." The queen did not move. "He stood for me when my own guards fled. I will not abandon him." "Then you will both die slowly." The leader raised its blade and charged forward. It moved like darkness itself, fast and silent, the shadows around its body trailing behind like smoke. Sung barely had time to lift his tray before the blade came down. Metal met shadow. The impact was stronger than anything Sung had ever felt. The force of the blow traveled through the tray and into his arms, shaking his entire body. He stumbled back, almost falling, but somehow kept his feet. The assassin struck again, and again. Each blow was faster than the last, each one aimed at a different part of his body. Sung blocked what he could and dodged what he could not. The tray was dented now, nearly bent in half, but it still held. The other assassins watched, not joining the fight. This was entertainment for them, a small human fighting their leader with a kitchen tray. They would let the game go on a little longer before they ended it. Sung felt blood on his face. A cut had opened above his eye and warm liquid ran down his cheek. His arms were screaming with pain, his lungs burned. He was slowing down with each passing second. But he did not stop. The assassin leader was not even trying hard. Sung could see this. The creature was playing with him, testing him, curious about how long he could last. Each strike was designed to hurt, not to kill. Not yet. "You are strong for such a small creature," the leader said, almost with respect. "I have killed warriors twice your size who fell faster than you. What is your secret?" Sung did not waste breath on words. He kept moving, kept blocking, kept fighting. The queen stood behind him, watching. She could not fight. She had no weapon, no training. But she did not run. She stayed where she was, her golden eyes following every movement of the battle. The assassin leader grew tired of the game. Its strikes became faster, harder, more accurate. One blow caught Sung on the shoulder, sending pain shooting down his arm. Another hit his leg, and he fell to one knee. "Enough," the leader said. "You have fought well, human, better than any guard in this palace, but it ends now." It raised its blade for a killing blow. Sung looked up at the creature standing over him. He thought about Earth. He thought about his family. He thought about all the things he would never see again. Then he threw his ruined tray at the assassin's face. It was a desperate move, a foolish move, but it worked. The assassin did not expect it. The tray hit the creature's face with a loud crash, and for just a moment it stumbled back. One moment was enough. Sung lunged forward and grabbed the assassin's blade arm. He was not strong enough to stop the creature, but he did not need to stop it. He just needed to hold on. His hands burned where they touched the shadow blade, pain worse than fire shooting through his palms, but he did not let go. The assassin tried to shake him off. It swung its arm wildly, slamming Sung against the wall, the floor, anything it could reach. But Sung's grip did not break. He clung to that arm like his life depended on it, because it did. "Let go, human," the assassin screamed. Its voice was no longer calm. For the first time it sounded angry. "Release me." Sung said nothing. His teeth were clenched so tight that he could not speak. Blood was pouring from his hands now, from cuts all over his body. Every part of him was in pain, but he did not let go. The other assassins finally moved. They came forward, their blades ready to cut Sung down, but before they could reach him, something happened. A blast of energy hit the hallway. It came from behind the assassins, from the direction of the stairs. A bright white light that filled the corridor and threw the creatures against the walls. When the light faded, Sung saw soldiers pouring into the hallway, not the palace guards who had fled. These were different soldiers. They wore black armor and carried weapons that glowed with strange energy. The Imperial Guard, the Queen's personal army stationed outside the city during the festival. Someone had called for help. The battle that followed was short but violent. The assassins were deadly, but they were also tired from a night of killing. The Imperial Guard was fresh and angry. Energy blasts filled the air. Shadow blades clashed with armored fists. One by one, the assassins fell. Sung lay on the ground, too weak to move. His hands were still wrapped around the leader's arm, even though the creature was no longer fighting. He could not make his fingers open. They were locked in place, burned and bleeding and broken. A soldier knelt beside him. "You can let go now," the soldier said gently. "It is over." Sung blinked. His vision was blurry, his thoughts slow. But somehow he understood. He released his grip and his hands fell to his sides. The soldier lifted him carefully. Sung's head fell against the soldier's chest, and he saw the Queen standing nearby. She was speaking to a general, pointing at the assassins' bodies, giving orders. But when she saw Sung looking at her, she stopped. She walked over to him. Her face was calm, but her eyes were wet. "Take him to the medical wing," she told the soldier. "He is to receive the best care we have, whatever he needs. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Majesty." The soldier carried Sung away. The last thing he saw before he lost consciousness was the Queen, standing in the middle of the ruined hallway, surrounded by bodies and blood, looking at him with those golden eyes. Then darkness took him. He woke up 3 days later. The room was white and quiet. Soft light came through large windows, and the air smelled clean and fresh. Sung tried to move, but pain shot through every part of his body. He groaned and fell back against the pillows. A female appeared beside his bed. She wore the white clothes of a healer and her face was kind. "Do not move," she said softly. "You have many injuries, you need rest." "Where am I?" Sung's voice was rough and weak. "The Royal Medical Wing. You have been here for 3 days. The healer checked something on a screen beside his bed. "You are very lucky to be alive. Most of your injuries would have killed, but your species is strange. You keep going when you should stop." Sung remembered the fight, the assassin's blade, his burning hands, the soldiers arriving at the last moment. "The Queen," he said, "is she safe?" The healer smiled. "Yes, thanks to you she is safe." She paused. "She has come to see you every day. She sits by your bed and reads reports while you sleep. I think she feels guilty that you were hurt protecting her." Sung closed his eyes. The Queen visited him. That did not make sense. He was just a servant. "Rest now," the healer said. "You need to heal." He slept again, and this time he dreamed. He dreamed of Earth. He dreamed of walking through a forest with his father, looking at the trees and the birds and the sky. His father was teaching him the names of plants, pointing at flowers and leaves and explaining what each one was. "You see this one," his father said, picking a small red flower. "This is called a poppy. It grows in places where the ground has been disturbed. Battlefields mostly. It is a flower of memory. We plant them to remember the people we have lost. Sung looked at the flower. Why does it grow in battlefields? Because that is where the soil is broken. The seeds need broken ground to take root. They need damage to grow. His father smiled. Sometimes the worst places create the most beautiful things. Sung woke up again. This time he was not alone. The queen sat in a chair beside his bed. She was reading a document, her golden eyes moving across the page. She wore simpler clothes than before, a plain blue dress with no crown. She looked tired. "Your Majesty," Sung said, trying to sit up. She looked at him and held up her hand. "Do not move. The healer will be angry with both of us if you hurt yourself more." Sung stopped trying to sit. "How long have you been here?" "A few hours. I come every day." She set down her document and looked at him directly. "Do you know what happened after you fell unconscious?" "The soldiers came, the Imperial Guard." "Yes, but do you know how they came so quickly? They were stationed outside the city. It should have taken them much longer to arrive." Sung shook his head. "When the assassins first attacked, one of my servants sent a message. A young female from the intelligence ministry, working undercover in my kitchen. She learned of the plot and tried to warn everyone she could. She sent word to the Imperial Guard before the assassins even reached the palace." Sung remembered the strange female who had warned him to stay in the kitchen. "She warned me too. She told me to hide." "Yes, she told me about that." The queen smiled slightly. "She said you did not listen." "I could not listen. You were in danger." The queen was quiet for a moment. "The guards I trusted most, the ones who swore to die for me, they ran when the assassins came. 12 of my finest soldiers, trained since birth, armed with the best weapons in the Empire. They fled." Her voice grew soft. "But you did not run. A kitchen servant from a distant world with no weapon except a metal tray. You stood alone against 7 of the most dangerous killers in the galaxy. Why?" Sung thought about the question. "You asked me about spite, Your Majesty, about humans who fight when they cannot win. I think that was why. I could not let them hurt you without trying to stop them, even if I knew I would fail." "Spite," the queen repeated. "Such a strange emotion." She reached out and took his bandaged hand very gently. "I have ruled this empire for 100 years. I have met thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds, but I have never met anyone like you, Sung." It was the first time she had used his name. "I was just doing what felt right," he said. "No," the queen's grip tightened slightly. "What you did was more than right. It was remarkable. My own guards abandoned me, but a human kitchen servant stood alone against the darkness." She released his hand and stood up. "When you are healed, we will talk again. There is much to discuss about your future." "My future, Your Majesty." She smiled, and for the first time the smile reached her eyes. "Did you think I would send you back to the kitchen after what you have done? No, Sung. Your days as a servant are over." She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "The female who warned you, the undercover agent. She has asked to speak with you when you are better. Her name is Bin. I think she wants to apologize for putting you in danger." "She did not put me in danger. She tried to save me." "I know, but she feels responsible. Perhaps you can tell her that she should not." The queen paused. "You are a remarkable being, Sung. I am glad fate brought you to my world." Then she was gone, and Sung was alone again. He lay back against the pillows and looked at his bandaged hands. They hurt less than before, but they would never be the same. The healers had told him that the burns from the shadow blade would leave permanent scars. He did not mind. The scars would remind him of what he had done, of standing alone when everyone else ran, of fighting for someone who had shown him kindness in a world of strangers. He closed his eyes and thought about poppies growing in broken ground. Sometimes the worst places create the most beautiful things. 2 weeks passed before Sung could walk again. His body healed slowly, piece by piece. The cuts on his face closed and became thin white lines. The damage to his arms and legs faded to dull aches, but his hands took the longest. The burns from the shadow blade had gone deep, and even the best medicine could not remove all the damage. He did not mind the scars. They were proof that the night had been real. Sometimes, lying alone in his bed, he wondered if he had imagined the whole thing, if it had all been a fever dream from a dying mind. But then he would look at his hands and remember the feel of the assassin's arm, the burning pain of the shadow blade, the weight of his choices. On the 15th day, the healer told him he could leave the medical wing. She gave him new clothes to wear, not the simple servant's clothes he had worn before, but something finer. Dark blue fabric that felt soft against his skin. Simple but well made. A gift from the queen, the healer explained. She wanted you to have something nice. Sung thanked her and dressed carefully. His hands were still clumsy, still learning how to work with their new scars, but he managed. When he stepped out of the medical wing, a young female was waiting for him. She was small for her kind, only about 7 feet tall. Her skin was a light blue, almost silver, and her eyes were a soft purple color. She wore simple black clothes, the kind that would not stand out in a crowd. When she saw Sung, she bowed her head. "I am Bin," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I am the one who warned you to stay in the kitchen." "I remember," Sung bowed his head in return. "Thank you for trying to save me." Bin looked up, surprise on her face. "Thank me. You almost died because of me. If I had warned the guards earlier, if I had been faster in my investigation, maybe none of this would have happened." The guards ran away anyway. Faster warning would not have made them brave. Bin was silent for a moment, then she smiled just a little. "You are strange for a human. I expected you to be angry with me." "Why would I be angry? You tried to help, you called for the Imperial Guard, you saved us all." "You saved the Queen, I just made a message." Sung shook his head. "Without your message, the Imperial Guard would not have come in time. We would both be dead, the Queen would be dead, everything you did mattered." Bin studied him for a long moment. Her purple eyes seemed to look right through him. "The Queen was right about you," she finally said. "You are remarkable." "I am just a human." "Yes, that is what makes you remarkable." Bin gestured down the hallway. "Come, the Queen has asked me to bring you to her. She has things to discuss with you." They walked together through the palace. It was strange to be here as something other than a servant. Sung noticed things he had never noticed before. The way the light came through the windows, the beauty of the paintings on the walls, the sound of his footsteps on the stone floor. When he was a servant, he had been invisible. He had moved through these halls like a ghost, seeing nothing, feeling nothing. Now, for the first time, he felt like he was actually present, like he was part of this world instead of just passing through it. They reached the Queen's private study. It was a smaller room than the throne room or the Great Hall, but it was beautiful in its own way. Shelves of books lined the walls. A large window looked out over the gardens. And in the center of the room, sitting behind a desk covered with papers, was Queen. She looked up when they entered. Her golden eyes found Sung immediately, and she smiled. "Ah, there you are. Please sit down. We have much to talk about." Sung sat in the chair she indicated. Bin stood near the door, quiet and watchful. "First," the Queen said, "I want to thank you again for what you did. The words feel small compared to your actions, but I do not know what else to say. You saved my life." "I did what anyone would do, Your Majesty." "No, you did what no one else was willing to do. There is a difference." The Queen picked up a document from her desk. "I have spent the last 2 weeks thinking about how to repay you. You cannot stay in the kitchen. That would be insulting after what you have done. But I was not sure what role would suit you best." "I do not need any reward, Your Majesty. I was just doing what felt right." The Queen smiled. "I know, that is one of the things I admire about you, but I cannot leave you without any position. The court would talk. They already talk, you know, about the human who stood when the guards fled. You have become quite famous." Sung felt his face grow warm. I did not mean to become famous. Few people do, but sometimes our actions speak louder than our intentions. The Queen set down the document and looked at him directly. I have a proposal for you. It may sound strange, so please hear me out before you decide. Sung nodded. I want you to become my advisor. For a moment, Sung was sure he had heard wrong. Your advisor, Your Majesty. Yes, my personal advisor on matters of courage and loyalty. Someone who can remind me what true bravery looks like. Someone who is not afraid to tell me the truth, even when the truth is difficult. But I am just a human. I know nothing about politics or ruling an empire. That is exactly why I want you. The Queen leaned forward. My other advisors are experts in trade and warfare and diplomacy. They give me advice based on calculation and strategy. But you, Sung, you stood against assassins with a metal tray. You did not calculate the odds. You did not form a strategy. You simply did what your heart told you was right. And almost got myself killed. Yes, but sometimes that is exactly what is needed. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the most dangerous thing. I need someone who understands that. The Queen paused. Will you accept? Sung looked at his hands. 2 weeks ago he had been a kitchen servant, a prisoner from a distant world. Nobody special, nobody important. Now the Queen of the Empire was asking him to be her advisor. May I ask a question first, Your Majesty? Of course. Why me? There must be many others more qualified, others who are not from an unknown world on the edge of space, others who are not human. The Queen was quiet for a moment. Then she stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the gardens below, at the flowers and the fountains and the purple sky. When I was young, she said, my mother told me a story. It was about a great warrior who saved our people from an enemy army. This warrior was not the strongest or the fastest. They were not the most skilled with weapons. But when the battle came, they were the only one who did not run. They stood alone against the enemy and held them back long enough for help to arrive. She turned to face Sung. That story is 1,000 years old. It has been told 1,000,000 times. Every child in our empire knows it. But until 2 weeks ago, I thought it was just a story, a legend, something to inspire people but not something that could actually happen. Her golden eyes were bright. Then you came along, a small human with a kitchen tray, and you showed me that the story was true, that there are still beings in this universe who will stand alone against the darkness, who will fight not because they can win, but because they cannot walk away. She walked back to her desk and sat down. That is why I want you, not because you are qualified, not because you are an expert, but because you are the kind of person this empire needs more of. And if I cannot create more people like you, the least I can do is keep you close and learn from you. Sung felt something in his chest, something warm and strange. He had been alone for so long, a stranger in a strange world. Nobody had ever seen value in him. Nobody had ever thought he mattered. Until now. I will accept, he said, but I have one condition. The Queen raised an eyebrow. A condition. Yes, I want to learn. I want to understand your empire, your politics, your people. I do not want to be just a symbol. I want to be useful. I want to help. The Queen smiled. That is not a condition. That is exactly what I was hoping for. She nodded toward Bin, who was still standing by the door. Bin will help you learn. She knows more about this empire than most people alive. She will be your teacher and your guide. Bin stepped forward and bowed. It would be my honor. Sung stood up and bowed to the Queen. Thank you, Your Majesty. I will try to be worthy of your trust. You already are, the Queen said. Now go rest, heal. In 1 week your new duties will begin. And Sung. Yes, Your Majesty. Stop calling me Your Majesty when we are alone. It makes me feel old, she smiled. Will do. Sung felt his face grow warm again. Yes, why yes. He left the study with Bin at his side. They walked in silence for a while through the long hallways of the palace. Finally, Bin spoke. "You have done something few beings ever achieve," she said. "What is that?" "You have earned the Queen's respect. Not just her gratitude, but her genuine respect. She does not give that easily." Sung looked down at his hands. "I did not do it to earn anything. I just did not want to see her hurt." "I know, that is why she respects you." Bin paused at a crossing of hallways. "Your new quarters are in the West Wing, nicer than the servant quarters. You will have your own room, your own space." "I am not used to having my own space." "You will learn," Bin smiled. "You will learn many things in the coming weeks. The Queen has high hopes for you, Sung, and so do I." They continued walking. Outside the windows, the two suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere in the distance, birds were singing. Sung thought about the strange path his life had taken. A crashed ship, 3 years of service, 1 night of blood and fire, and now a new beginning. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if he could be the advisor the Queen needed. But he knew one thing for certain. He would try. With everything he had, he would try. Because that was what humans did. They kept going. They kept fighting. They stood alone against the darkness. Even when they were afraid. Especially when they were afraid. 1 year passed. Sung stood on a balcony overlooking the city of. The two suns were rising, casting long shadows across the streets and buildings below. He wore fine clothes now, dark blue with silver trim, the colors of the Queen's personal advisors. A small badge on his chest showed his rank. He still was not used to it. Behind him, a door opened. He turned to see Bin stepping onto the balcony, carrying a cup of tea. "You are up early again," she said, handing him the cup. "You always come here when you cannot sleep." "I like watching the sunrise. It reminds me of home." Sung took a sip of the tea. It was perfect, just the right temperature. Bin had learned how he liked it. "Do you still miss Earth?" "Every day, but it is different now. Less painful. This world has become my home too." Bin stood beside him, looking out at the city. In the past year, she had become his closest friend. She had taught him everything about the empire, its history, its politics, its people. She had helped him navigate the complicated world of the royal court. She had been patient with his mistakes and celebrated his successes. "The Queen has asked to see you," Bin said. "Something important has happened." "Something bad?" "I do not know," she did not say, but she seemed serious. Sung finished his tea and set down the cup. Then we should not keep her waiting. They walked through the palace together. Sung noticed the way people looked at him now, not with the dismissal they once showed a servant, but with respect. Some even bowed their heads as he passed. He still found it strange. The story of the night he stood against the assassins had spread across the empire. Songs were written about him. Paintings showed a small human figure standing before the Queen, metal tray in hand, facing down the darkness. Children played games where they pretended to be him, fighting imaginary enemies with kitchen tools. He had become a symbol, a reminder that courage could come from the most unexpected places. They reached the Queen's private study. The guards at the door, new guards who had replaced the ones who fled, saluted as Sung approached. He still remembered how they used to look past him when he was a servant. Now they stood at attention. Inside, Queen was waiting. She sat behind her desk, but she was not alone. A male stood before her, someone Sung did not recognize. He wore the uniform of a military officer, and his face was hard and cold. "Sung," the Queen said, "thank you for coming. This is General. He brings news from the eastern provinces." The general looked at Sung with barely hidden contempt. "I came to speak with you, Your Majesty, not with the human." "The human is my advisor, he stays." The Queen's voice was calm but firm. "Continue your report." The general's jaw tightened, but he obeyed. "The raiders have attacked again. 3 villages destroyed, hundreds dead. Our forces were overwhelmed." How? Sung asked. The eastern provinces have the largest military presence in the empire. The general turned to him, his eyes cold. I do not answer to you, human. General, the queen's voice was sharp. You will answer his question. He speaks with my authority. For a moment the general looked like he wanted to argue. Then he bowed his head. Our forces were positioned at the wrong locations. The raiders struck where we were weakest. And why were your forces positioned wrongly? Our intelligence was faulty. We believed the raiders would attack from the north. They came from the south instead. Sung studied the general's face. Something was wrong. The explanation was too simple, too convenient. May I speak freely? He asked. The queen nodded. Sung looked at the general. You knew where the raiders would attack. Someone told you, someone in your command, but you moved your forces away anyway. You let those villages burn. The general's face went pale. How dare you accuse me of? The eastern provinces are controlled by House, Sung continued. The same house that sent assassins to kill the queen 1 year ago. The same house that has been waiting for another chance to take power. He turned too. This was not a military failure. It was sabotage. The room was silent. The general's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Those are serious accusations, said softly. Do you have proof? No, but I know what I see in his eyes. He is afraid, not of the raiders, of being discovered. The queen looked at the general for a long moment. Then she pressed a button on her desk. The door opened, and 4 imperial guards entered the room. General, she said, you are under arrest for treason against the crown. You will be held until we can investigate these accusations fully. The general's face twisted with rage. He turned toward Sung, his hand reaching for his weapon. You filthy human, you have ruined everything. He never reached his weapon. The imperial guards were on him in seconds, pinning his arms behind his back and dragging him from the room. His screams of anger echoed down the hallway until a door closed and cut them off. Sighed and leaned back in her chair. Well done, Sung. I suspected him, but I needed someone to say it out loud, someone he would underestimate. You used me as bait. I used you as truth. You see things that others miss. That is why I made you my advisor. She smiled, but it was tired. House still works against me, even after their assassins failed. They are patient enemies. What will you do? What I must: investigate, find the proof, remove the traitors. Stood up and walked to the window. Sometimes I wonder if it will ever end. The plotting, the betrayal, the constant fighting for power. Sung joined her by the window. It ends when you stop fighting. As long as you keep standing, they cannot win. Is that what humans believe? It is what I believe. You taught me that some fights are worth having, even when you cannot see the end, even when you are tired and afraid and alone. He looked at her. You are not alone. You have me. You have been. You have everyone who believes in what you are trying to build. Was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand, the one with the burned scars, the one that would never fully heal. 1 year ago you stood alone against assassins with nothing but a kitchen tray. You did not know if help would come. You did not know if you would survive, but you stood anyway. She squeezed his hand gently. That is the lesson I learned from you, Sung. That sometimes standing alone is enough. That one person refusing to move can change everything. I was just trying to help. I know that is what makes it so powerful. Released his hand. Go rest. The investigation will take time and I will need your help in the days ahead, but for now, rest. Sung bowed and left the study. Bin was waiting for him outside, her face full of questions. What happened? General was arrested. House has been moving against the Queen again. Bin's eyes widened. Will there be war? Perhaps, but not today. Sung started walking toward his quarters. Today we stopped them. That is enough. They walked in silence through the halls of the palace. The sun was fully up now, filling the corridors with warm light. Servants and nobles moved around them, everyone busy with the endless work of running an empire. Sung Bin said quietly, "Do you ever regret it, standing against the assassins that night, everything that came after?" Sung thought about the question. He thought about the scars on his hands, the weight of responsibility he now carried, the enemies who hated him simply because he had survived. "No," he said finally. "If I had to do it again, I would make the same choice. Even knowing how much it would cost you. Some things are worth the cost." He stopped and turned to face her. "I was nothing before that night, a servant, a prisoner, nobody. But then I found something worth fighting for, worth standing for, and that changed everything." Bin nodded slowly. "You know that you are not nobody now. You are important to many people, to the Queen, to me." Sung smiled. It still felt strange being important, but it was a good kind of strange. "Then I will keep standing," he said, "for as long as I can, for as long as I am needed." They continued walking. Outside the windows, the city spread out beneath the purple sky. Millions of going about their lives, most of them unaware of the plots and dangers that threatened their world. Most of them safe because of people like Bin, people like him. Sung thought about Earth, so far away. He thought about his family, who probably believed he was dead. He wondered if he would ever see them again. But he also thought about this world, about the friends he had made, the purpose he had found, the person he had become. He was still human, still small, still. But he was no longer invisible, no longer nothing. He was the one who stood when the guards fled. And he would keep standing, no matter what came next. Far across the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, humans went about their daily lives. They did not know that one of their own had become a legend in a distant empire. They did not know that songs were sung about a human who stood alone against the darkness. But someday they would learn. Someday the story of Sung would reach Earth. It would join the other stories of humans who refused to give up, who fought against impossible odds, who stood alone when everyone else ran. And when that day came, humans everywhere would understand something important. That courage is not the absence of fear. It is standing up anyway. It is choosing to fight even when you cannot win. It is being human. And that, more than anything, was worth remembering. In the palace of Under the Light of Two Suns, a small human walked through the halls with his head held high. The guards saluted as he passed. The nobles nodded with respect. And somewhere, in a study overlooking the gardens, a queen smiled at the thought of her most unlikely advisor. The one who had taught her what it truly meant to stand. The end.